Welcome to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast, where we talk all things Panther City Lacrosse Club. Now here are your hosts, Nicholas and Andy.
With only 2 games left in the season, Panther City looked to take on the Albany Firewolves and try to get one more in the win column before the end of the season. Welcome everyone to the Cowtown Cats Lacrosse Podcast. My name's Nicholas, of course, joined by Andy.
Hello.
Andy, like I just mentioned, there are 2 games left in the season. We're kind of coming down to the nitty-gritty as far as where we are in the standings and the season as a whole as well.
And yeah, I think coming into the weekend, the top 3 or 4 seeds were already decided, but the next 4 were pretty much up for grabs amongst more than 4 teams. So I think you've got at least probably double that are jockeying for position. And Panther City's right in the middle of it. We went to the weekend at 500 and obviously want to get that above 500 if we have any realistic shot of making the playoffs.
Well, yeah, and it just seems like, again, we're getting towards the end of the season, and everyone counts, especially with only 2 games left. With only 2 games left, though, comes our last home game of the regular season at Dickies Arena. So, it was fan appreciation night. I will say thank you to all those who came by and said hi at the tailgate. There was actually more than just us tailgating. There was a couple other people tailgating. One of them is head of the fan club, and then the other just kind of a family group. But just a really good time. I'm glad everybody was able to come out for that and get some appreciation before the game started.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to chat to some other fans of the game, and if they were kind of new, then tell them like what we've been doing, what we try to do with the podcast in terms of just supporting the team, breaking down games, looking ahead to new stuff, and just really kind of bolstering the lacrosse community in our area.
For sure, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. But coming into this game, a couple of pregame notes. Of course, they signed Lentz last week. He got injured in our home game. He was questionable coming in. So was Foley, but I think he ended up playing.
Yeah, Foley, I know both were questionable going in. And Lentz, I remember they said he had some kind of lower body or maybe a leg injury after his short stint last weekend. But yeah, Foley was out there, so I guess he felt good enough to give it a go, which was great to see because he's such a vital part of our defense.
Well, and that was also kind of surprising to see because I really didn't expect to see him the rest of the year, at least the regular season. But then on top of that, Sheridan and Thompson were both out. I don't think there was any injuries. It was just kind of shuffling around the lineup at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Coach TK alluded to it after the game, but he said they only dressed 6 forwards for the game. So, ran a pretty tight ship on offense, and that's probably why we saw some of the different looks that we saw when the game actually started.
For sure. And then to touch on Albany, they are the surprise team of this year. Already locked up their place in the playoffs, but a win here would have locked down a home playoff game in the first round. So they did have something to play for, but they're kind of in a rough spot. They lost, 4 straight or 4 of the last 5?
Yeah, going into the game against us, they'd lost 4 straight, and they still have a pretty good-looking record, but a lot of that is due to early season success. They started the season 6-2, and then they were 10-2 at one point. Oh, sorry. They started the season undefeated at 6-0, and then they were 10-2, I think number 1 in the league, even above the Toronto Rock until they started this 4-game skid. So they obviously want to right the ship. They're a young team. They want to, I don't know if Alex Simmons and Ty Kurtz, you can't really say they've hit a rookie wall or anything like that because they're still putting up numbers and losses. But yeah, they definitely want to get things right on their end, just like Panther City does.
Well, yeah, and obviously, they're looking for a win. Panther City is looking for a win. A win wouldn't, set a spot for us in the playoffs yet still, just because there was other games that didn't fall our way. But every win counts, and we needed this one. But coming into the first quarter, it was a pretty good back and forth start, but someone we didn't expect to get things started for us, Mr. Goodwin himself, he he actually was on the offensive side, gets a score, puts us up 1-0 early.
Yeah, and it looked like it was something intentional on the coaching staff and the team's part. Like, there are times when you see a transition or a defender kind of stuck out there and you're like, oh, I guess he didn't turn around and run back towards the bench soon enough. But no, they actually, Goodwin, he's a heady vet, makes a lot of good plays on both sides of the ball, and it worked out for us to start the game to get that early score.
Yeah, and if we were going to have a chance against Albany, I mean, again, I know Albany's kind of had this skid, but I mean, their bread and butter has been getting up early on teams, and so if we were going to stick with them, we had to kind of, meet them shot for shot, if not get a good head start. But yeah, I mean, up 1-0, and then not shortly after that, your man, I feel like this was his game. That it's like he's trying to make up for the whole rest of the season. Daymud outlet passes to Medeiros, and I mean, it was again one of those times where he was like, should I? Nope, he just went for it. Great goal by him in transition, put us up 2-0.
Yeah, and it was vintage Medi from last season. He hasn't scored nearly at the rate that he did last year for whatever reason, whether due to different personnel and just a different game plan, wanting to prioritize defense over gambling in transition. But man, it was great on his end, and also Daymud getting him that pass right after his save. So good to see him get going early. And Goodwin too. It's we mentioned they only dressed 6 offensive players or dedicated offensive players. So the fact that Goodwin and Medeiros were the first 2 guys to score for Panther City was a great sign.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not the normal suspects, it's not the usual suspects making those shots early on. But yeah, talking about Daymud, I mean, solid start from him, and we'll talk about it as the game goes on, but really getting some good blocks. Really, I mean, his defense was helping out too, but a lot of good shot blocks from him early on.
Yeah, he was able to lift his shoulders up if they were coming high, moving well laterally. And we mentioned this while we were watching the game live, that he was getting really good at diving on the ball or kind of just landing his body on it to make sure there was no doubt that was going to roll in behind him. So yeah, he started off really good.
Well, and that's something I hope we continue to see, obviously with the last game and heading into the playoffs, because too many times have we seen, balls either get behind him and slow roll in, or he loses it and he just kind of isn't sure what to do. So yeah, it was good to see him a little bit more active on the defensive side. Well, it is. We'll take a quick time to highlight something from Albany. Unfortunately, one of my favorite players was playing for Albany, which I think half the fans in the arena was hoping he would just come back next year. But yeah, they had a nice little tribute to Nathan Grinnan. It's great to see him back out there playing, but man, I miss him on Panther City.
Yeah, you definitely love his moxie and just the enthusiasm and energy he would play with whenever he was out there. So it was great to see him, and it was kind of funny to see. Box lacrosse is a pretty physical game, so you're inevitably going to knock guys around, and a guy like Grennan, with the way he plays and kind of gets under his opponent's skin, is no exception. So it was kind of fun catching those little interactions between him and the Panther City guys just after plays, just kind of playful hit with the stick or something, or shoving him with the shoulder.
I'm sure they picked on him throughout the night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so yeah, but yeah, it was a really cool tribute to see. Obviously, he was a fan favorite in both his years at Panther City, and it's a young team as well. So that really goes to show the kind of imprint he made on the community, that they were able to put that together for him.
Right. Well, that was our one highlight for Albany in the first quarter, because soon after that, Crawford, man, this was the second time I noticed it in the first quarter, but he was taking on a defender. Of course, he was trying to take off two defenders at one point too. But one-on-one, gets a great goal. But I think if I remember right, this was the goal where I'm like, he shot down low, and it just kind of it was like a hook shot. That's the best way I can describe it. Huh?
Yeah. It was almost like, think of this might date me, but Kareem Abdul-Jabbar
Right,
is
there you
someone
go.
going up, but instead of shooting the ball with an upward trajectory, he was just kind of shooting it down under Doug Jamison's legs, basically, because I think it was a 5-hole goal.
Yeah.
And just some of the shots that Crawford, I don't want to say gets away with because he does it so regularly, but some of the creativity in his shot making prowess is always fun to watch.
Well, and what threw me off was it wasn't that fast of a shot. It was just it was just like a little bloop, there it is, and it goes right underneath his legs and into the goal. So I was like, hey, I'll take it. But yeah, he gets away with some shots that I don't think anybody else would want to take. But yeah, Crawford putting us up 3-0. And then as the quarter kind of winds down, another goal from us. I mean, Goodwin. I mean, 2 in the first quarter. I think that was another transition goal, right? Put us up 4-0.
Yeah. So his first goal was taking an offensive shift, but this next one was similar to the Medi one before it, except Goodwin, after Sellers got him the outlet pass, Goodwin it almost looked like he didn't know what he wanted to do, but he scored out of it. So maybe he was planning all along. He kind of like waited for a sec, and I think him hesitating was enough to kind of catch the defense off guard or get them a little more relaxed than they should have been, because he struck one in the net pretty soon after.
Yeah, and an early lead like that. I mean, it was just nice to see. It was good to see. I think at that point, I felt like the team was having a good time out there. They were kind of gelling together pretty easily, and with the added play of Daymud, getting those blocks, it just altogether was a really good quarter, to be honest. I do see in your notes you added towards the end of the quarter we did have there was a power play, but nothing came from it. But pretty much at the end, the goalies were playing catch with each other.
Yeah. Jameson, he saw the clock winding down. He made a good save, and he just kind of chunked that ball as far as he could. He was a little offline because Damien, it was almost like playing like catch with a football, like with a buddy or something. You just saw him stick his net like casually out to catch Jameson's. I don't know if it would be considered a shot on goal.
Yeah, semi-shot.
Yeah. So it was just kind of funny to see it play out that way.
Yeah, he was hoping somehow it would just get past Daymud somehow, full field, shot, whatever. But after the first up 4-0, and then going into the second, I mean, it's Panther City all starting us off again. I mean, Showtime, Colin Crawford, he gets another great goal, and then Medieros, I mean, another transition goal, put us up 6-0 before we knew it, and honestly, I don't know if that's the best start. Obviously, I think overall Vegas probably had our best start over, in any game we ever had this year. But 6-0, I mean, you're shutting them out defensively, and you're getting goals from people who you don't usually get goals from. So, top tier in my book so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fact that 2/3 of our goals starting out came from transition guys is really telling, because that's an area where we've gotten a few points here from game to game, not necessarily from the transition players themselves, but just on fast break opportunities. To see how well they played, and especially Medi, we've kind of picked on him now and then this season to be like, where's the Medi we saw last year that led the league in transition goals?
Right.
So to see him do that well, and Doug Jameson, he's a solid goalie. He was goalie of the year in 2020 or 2021, if I'm not mistaken, right before the pandemic shut the season down. But he seemed to have a lot of trouble with low shots on goal from Panther City. And I think that's something that whether the players themselves or the coaching staff recognize, they took full advantage of it on Crawford's goal. It was kind of similar to his first one in that, like, it made contact with him first before it kind of rolled behind him. The same kind of thing we were saying, Dame, you did a good job preventing this game. Jameson was on the unlucky end of it. And then, Medi doing what he does. That was classic Medi, just seeing him kind of just stroll down the middle of the field and then get one off on him. So, yeah, it was, watching it, I don't think we played perfect necessarily, but the fact that we were up 6-0 and Damude was playing great, non-traditional offensive guys were doing awesome. It was just like, at that point, I might have, as a fan, been like, oh, we've got this in the bag. And
yeah. Well, we had it in the bag. And then in true Panther City 2023-2024 season, way, we somehow let Albany get back in. I mean, and it wasn't quick. It was just overtime. But Albany finally gets a score in transition. And that was I believe that was a one-on-one against Damude. Because, again, I think that's the hardest thing for Damude is just those one-on-one goals. And we talk about him, how it's just harder for a goalie because it's you and him, and you have to you have to guess sometimes. You like, hey, what's he going to do? What's he look like he's going to do? Like, sometimes you're good and you can guess correctly, and sometimes not. And they took advantage of that. And then it's just like one after another. I mean, yeah. Anyway, if you want, did you want to talk about that first transition goal though? Because I mean, I will say that was probably the hardest goal that they got that second quarter.
Yeah, just Jameson kind of pulled what Damie did earlier with Medi, where he just got the ball out to him, and Patrick Kachal made a great play. And obviously, it helps when the goalie's kind of on an island and the defense isn't really set yet, and so he was able to get one on Damude. And at that point, with it being 6-1, I think there were still 10 minutes left in the second quarter. It's like, okay, well, play solid defense and we'll see what happens. And then they did for a while, but eventually Alex Simmons got his first goal. He got on the board. And Simmons, I'd say him and his teammate Ty Kurtz are probably, if not the front runners for Rookie of the Year, they're certainly up there. In fact, who knows? They might cancel each other's votes out.
Right.
But yeah. So he scored with about 6.5 minutes left in their regular offense, and soon after that, Ethan Walker, who along with Kurtz and Simmons is kind of part 3 of their 3-headed monster on offense, he scored, and before you know it, the deficit's cut in half, and you're just kind of like, have we seen this before?
Oh yeah. Well, and I will say this. I mean, looking at the times on these goals, it was 10 minutes and then 6 minutes and 4 minutes. So again, it wasn't like a streak where they get a goal, and then the next possession they get a goal. It's chipping away one goal at a time.
Right. And that's one difference, I think, between Albany and, like, let's say our games against San Diego. There's San Diego, Georgia's another team. They can just like score in a flurry. Albany can probably do that too, but credit to them being a young team, kind of having the patience to not just try to rush things and try to set up good shots for each other, because they certainly made us start sweating a little bit.
Well, yeah, and so after 6-3 with like I said, 2 minutes left, unfortunately, Grinnan does have some good moves going on there. He gets great penetration, but Ales passes to, and you're going to have to help me with the name, Piatelli.
Yeah, Piatelli.
Yeah, and cuts the lead 6-4. I mean, great move from Grinnan. Hate that he's on their team.
Yeah, we saw plenty of that his first two years in the league, with just him being able to get in there, absorb a couple of hits, and then find a guy as he's, in a lot of cases, as he's falling down. And then so Piatelli was able to score off of that. And at that point, you're like, oh gosh, it's almost like those 6 goals are not wiped away, but I mean, I'm glad we got them. Just because we certainly needed that early cushion with the way that second quarter went.
Well, and so going into halftime, we're still ahead 6-4. I mean, I'll just say first half thoughts, a lot of positives, but as Coach TK likes to point out, there's still a lot of negatives and a lot of things they needed to work on. But like you just said, I'm glad we had those 6 goals, because otherwise we'd kind of be in the middle of a fight right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know Albany, that I would say the one thing that gave me a bit more confidence than I might have had against a Toronto or a San Diego, a Georgia, the Halifax, it's one of those teams, is that Albany, they're good, but they are very young. And so I don't think I had the same kind of fear that I might have had against one of those veteran teams that really shows up pretty much every night. And so knowing that they were on a 4-game skid and they're talented, but a bit untested compared to some of the other veteran teams, that kind of gave me the confidence to think, okay, we'll have a solid second half and close this out.
Well, and that's something Albany is going to have to keep an eye on going into the playoffs. Is these games that there's certain things teams are taking advantage of. They got to make sure those teams don't take advantage of them in the playoffs, because that can put you in a hole really fast. But coming out of halftime, it's again not the usual person you would see to get things started again, but Goodwin. I mean, my gosh, he really did have a good night for himself. He gets a goal about a minute and a half in, puts back up 7-4. I mean, a really good night from him.
Yeah. So this guy scored a hat trick with just not even 2 minutes into the third quarter. Coming from a transition player, that's great. And the fact that he's able to do this, not just on fast break opportunities, but also within the set 5-on-5 offense is really cool. I think Goat and Will Malcolm were passing the ball around, and Goodwin was essentially standing in the spot where we've seen like Jason Knox, and then from past seasons like Cam Wingpernick, Patrick Dodds, where they would kind of camp out until the offense or the water kind of parted and open things up. And so, yeah, he was able to. He's got a lot of mustard on his shot, if you will. So yeah, it was great to see him continue doing basically right where he left off from the first half.
Yeah, and again, it's just getting offense from people you don't usually see a whole lot of offense from, and that's honestly we needed it obviously for this game. But going into the third, I mean, after going up 7-4, talking about the usual suspects, there is unfortunately one usual suspect when it comes to penalties, and his last name is Mitchell. But he got a penalty. We were able to kill it off. But still, I don't know how many penalty minutes this man has, but he's got to be getting up there.
I can tell you that right now, actually. Let's see. Oh, did I close the tab? Let's see. I think according to the telecast, he was number 3 in the league. And yeah, so Jake Withers leads it with 48. Jason Subak on Vancouver's number 2 with 46. Brent Mitchell right behind them with 44. So he's only 4 minutes away from Jake Withers. And Withers, you kind of, I don't say you kind of expect him to have a lot of those because he's always mixing things up, being the face-off specialist and everything. But yeah, it's kind of fun. I was joking with you earlier that I think that's aside from Damude's number of saves, that's the only leaderboard that Panther City's on. I mean, that speaks to the balance offensively that Panther City has, but it's kind of like, oh, that's not the one that you want to see your team on.
Yeah, that's definitely not the stat board you want to be on. But I was glad we were able to kill it off. Unfortunately, a little bit after that, actually, let me see. So that was 7-5. Yeah, so that was at like 10 minutes or 11 minutes, and then at 8 minutes, unfortunately, Albany did get another score, cut the lead to 7-5. But it just seemed like our defense was a little bit better in the third quarter as far as shutting them down from the second quarter. And not only that, but, our offense, even though they couldn't get a whole lot going, they weren't letting too many things get past them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, just after that goal by Samford, things kind of seemed to slow down. I think one thing that helped kill Albany's momentum was they thought they had a goal. It was initially called a no goal by the refs, and they challenged it. And that challenge was unsuccessful because it was a Simmons diving goal right into the crease. And thankfully, I think the way the ball hit Damude, because it would have been a 5-hole goal, but before it crossed the plane, Simmons' body had landed in the crease by that point. And so you think, okay, rather than cutting the lead down to 1 for us, you basically, Albany loses that timeout, and it basically didn't happen. So I think
Yeah.
that definitely helped us out.
Well, yeah, anytime you can kind of successfully win a challenge that bodes in your favor, that's that's helpful to the team. But I will say Albany was I think it was in the third quarter where it seems like they got like 4 or 5 rebounds in a row. Was it that quarter or?
Yeah, it might have, because I remember there was one where it's like, man, I'm seeing a lot of Damute saves in a row.
Right,
so,
right.
which is like that's great for us and great for Damute, but help him out, guys.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, as the quarter was kind of winding down for the third, there definitely was some chippiness, and the one man you expected to be out there getting chippy with the other teams, Caputo. No penalties though, so that was good. But I think the refs were letting them play a little bit more, but they definitely let them get a few shots in here and there.
Yeah, I was surprised that. Well, I'm thankful, but I was definitely surprised that Caputo wasn't called for one, because I know whichever defender he was mixing up with lost their helmet at some point. And I thought, oh, okay, that's automatic, but thankfully it didn't happen. And I know that maybe the refs knew that on some level. That was Albany, hey, Panther City's got the lead. Let's kind of frustrate them to get them off of their game. And thankfully it didn't lead to anything. It didn't lead to any penalties for us, which was great.
Right. Well, and it just games go faster when there's less penalties, and so that was something I was honestly. This game really went by really fast, but yeah, going into the fourth, we're what up 8-5 or 7-5. Yeah, and I thought to myself, okay, no, it was 7-5 going into the fourth. Can we actually do what we were supposed to do and finish this out? Because as we've seen 20 times this year, I feel like we get to the fourth and we're up on teams, they come back, or we let them get back in it and we can't close them out. So I had some definite reservations going into the fourth. But thankfully, those were quieted down a little bit. Not even a minute into the quarter, showtime. Callum Crawford, he gets another goal. Right? Oh yeah, that was him.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a minute and a half. Put us up 8-5, or 8-5 at that point. So, I mean, when you need him the most, he seems to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he kind of, it's good to have a veteran like him on the team that kind of knows when it's time to step up. I think by that point, he hadn't scored since early in the second quarter, so he was probably getting antsy to find the back of the net. He came off a great pick. This is probably either like Caputo or Knox. I don't quite remember, but yeah, great shot. Crawford doing what he does best, and he's inching closer and closer to, is it 500 goals for his career?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, he's right on the verge. I'm sure he's gonna get pretty close next week, but I'm hoping for it. But yeah, I mean, him consistently showing up every game and doing that kind of put me at ease a little bit. I mean, along not only that shot, but along with the Damute. I mean, again, just tons of shots. He's blocking, getting some great saves. I mean, we're not 6 minutes into the quarter before the next score, and he's blocking everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not just the 5-on-5 offense where guys can get set up and try to run plays, but also in the transition ones where he's left out in an island. He was able to get some great blocks that earlier, I think, with Pichalk's goal. That was their only transition goal of the game, if I'm not mistaken. So just to see him be able to recover, and we've seen games this year where Damute kind of sandwiches good quarters with kind of average or mediocre ones and whatnot. But in the fourth, when it came time to step it up a notch, he really showed out.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and so he gets that goal pretty early on the quarter. A lot of back and forth. Damute's making some great saves. Yeah, and like I said, it's 6 minutes left in the quarter before we get another score. It's Crawford again. So he gets a great goal, put us up 9-5, and then not what, a minute later? Oh no, it was a few minutes later. Finally, I mean, I was kind of wondering this whole game where Will Malcolm was. It took until the fourth quarter, but he finally gets a goal off the pass from Crawford, if I remember right. Put us up 10-5.
Yeah, and that pass from Crawford, it looked kind of awkward because it was one-handed when he was holding the stick up high, and he just kind of like, it was like a push pass to get the ball out of his stick for Malcolm to get the goal off of it. But and it was great to see. Like you said, this was a game where we saw guys that weren't the usual suspects score. Like for one, spoiler alert, Donville didn't get on the scoreboard or at least find the back of the net. He had some great assists, but didn't score any himself. So it was just good to see Will Malcolm find the net in this game. Not that he necessarily needed to, but that's got to help his confidence and kind of show him like, okay, I've still got this in my bag going forward. And it added to our cushion against Albany, which was great.
Yeah, and so with that, it was what, a little over 2 minutes left, and they started pulling their goalie, and I don't always think about, if it's the right time or when it's the right time to pull your goalie, but I did think it was at this point. You're like, what are you doing that for? But yeah, they did go empty net. Unfortunately, Will Malcolm was. Oh, actually, before that, Medeiros almost had a hat trick for the night. He went down there and he had a bad angle on it, and he shot, and it went right in front of the goal, and we were just like, "Oh, come on, man!"
Something tells me, I don't know if he realized it was empty net until the defense was able to kind of recover a bit. Because I feel like had he known right off the bat, then he would have
tried to shoot
been
earlier.
More aware. And yeah, it's funny. I kind of during the fan appreciation when they were signing autographs, like I brought that up with him.
Yeah,
and we had a good laugh about it.
Well, I mean, he almost had it, but Will Malcolm did end up getting it. He got an empty goal, put us up 11-5. Felt pretty safe at that point. Unfortunately, Albany did get 2 more goals with under a minute left. I mean, I think Walker is the one who scored 11-6, and then Grinnan. I mean, I am glad he finally got a goal. I'm glad we were up enough for it not to matter. But Grinnan did get a goal to close out the game. Final score 11-7. I mean, that was just it was a good closing out quarter for Panther City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was great to see. And despite those two goals with less than 40 seconds left, that's definitely one of the best games we've seen Damien play. And we got to talk with Coach TK a little after the game, and he brought up that that 6-0 lead kind of masked some other things he didn't like in terms of how we were playing defensively and whatnot. But one thing that he did mention was that Damien was rock solid throughout, and he really showed that.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, we'll get into David here in a bit, but I mean, overall, he had just probably the best solid game. One of the best games he's had all year. But we'll talk about our final thoughts on this game coming up. But of course, it leads us into Mr. Andrew's stats of the game. For Albany, Mr. Andrew, what stats do you have for us?
Well, so Doug Jamieson, I had already mentioned that he was goalie of the year a few years back, right before the pandemic closed things down. He didn't do so hot tonight. We didn't get a ton of shots on Albany, but the ones we did were pretty quality. Jamieson saved 30 out of 40 shots for 75%, which is a bit lower than a team would like to see if they're going to try to win. Plus, add the empty netter to that, and that accounts for 11 of our points. Meanwhile, on our side, Nick Damude, man, what a game. He saved 54 out of 61 shots for a stellar 88.5% save percentage. And you got to think, how do we manage to keep Albany out of the net for those last two? He would have been above 90% for the game. And yeah, I don't remember if that 88.5% is a career high for him or not, but it's got to be one of his highest. And not only that, but this is his third 50 save game of the year. So this was really, we've seen good from Damude. We've seen not so good from Damude. This was great. This was an excellent game by him. I alluded to the big shot on goal discrepancy. Seemed like Albany, whether it be because of Panther City's defense or just their aggression and the way they play offense, they got, I think, about 20 more goals than Panther City did. Or not goals, but shots on goal than Panther City. And despite that, you would normally think that's a pretty good indicator which team won, but because of the play of Damude, because of our defense at times, it really showed that on that end of the ball, we really put together a solid game. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but Damude played great. Mentioned that Panther City, they only dressed 6 forwards, which you got to think, oh, that's a really short rotation. Guys are going to get tired. Well, not to worry, because the transition players really came in the clutch. Goodwin, we mentioned how he started off the game with a goal, and he ended up with 3 for a hat trick. Really glad that we have him on the team now. And then Medi, it is just so great to see him score not 1 but 2 goals, and even the woodsy 3rd goal that he had. So that shows that he's more aggressive, finding the net, looking for his own shot when the opportunity arises. So those 5 goals by them, that essentially was, you take those away and we lose 7-6. So it was great to see them get going. Beyond that, Will Malcolm, he netted his 100th career goal with the first goal of the 4th, I think. And we talk about Will Malcolm a lot on here. He's one of the stars of the team, and on a night where Damude and the transition guys were doing really well, he shows late that he's still a force to be reckoned with. He finished with 5 points, had those 2 fourth quarter goals and then 3 assists. Crawford, meanwhile, Showtime had 4 goals and 2 assists, and I don't remember what his current tally is, but yeah, I want to say he's maybe 2 goals away, 2, 3, definitely less than 10 goals away from 500. I don't know if he'll go crazy against Calgary and manage to get that against them or what, but it's good to see him doing well too.
He could.
Yeah, knowing him. Beyond that, there were a few things that the team does have to work on. Once again, we were killed on faceoffs, 3-22. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. There was a fan during the game. They ended up on the Jumbotron, and they had a little handmade sign that said "Faceoffs matter," and it's like,
it's true.
yeah, we see you. And thankfully, we still won this game, and the outcome was relatively not in doubt after that first quarter. But ultimately, it's one element that you do want to see a bit more improvement on. I know you had mentioned that one strategy of Panther City's could be just defending the ball afterwards. Like if we're kind of like, okay, we're not going to win this face-off, let's get back on defense quicker and make sure things go that way. Who knows? Maybe they did that this game. Maybe that played into Sheridan sitting. I'm not completely sure, but yeah, it was another one of those. Well, that's one area that we consistently see ourselves kind of on the wrong side of. Albany did grab a lot more loosies than us, which, lo and behold, made Damude's great game that much more important. I think Albany grabbed 77 loosies to Panther City's 52. So pretty big discrepancy on that side. I'm sure I don't quite remember how faceoffs play into the loosey stats, but those two kind of go hand in hand. Beyond that, it was, interestingly enough, a very clean game compared to some of the more recent games that we've seen. There were only 3 penalties, only one by Panther City, courtesy of Mr. Mitchell. And of those 3 penalties, none of them led to power play goals. I don't know whether that's a testament to the defense or how good Damude and Jameson played in those opportunities or what, but like you said, it seemed to help the pace of the game. I know Panther City definitely seemed to benefit from the lack of it, because the offense could get going. The transition opportunities seemed a bit more smooth than it would without all the stoppages. So overall, yeah, it was nice to see that.
Well, and I mean, 2 things I definitely want to add. You talked about how I had mentioned about the face-offs. I really do feel like that has to be a viable option. Especially like if we were to go against San Diego again, where we get killed every time, you just have to figure out a way to say, okay, I'm gonna go for it, but I'm gonna let you win. But then I can try to defend against that, like either hold your stick down with mine or fight you for it a little bit more. But I don't know. It's just an idea, and I don't even know if that's a thing that they could even look at. But yeah, on that, and then just talking about David Insight, I mean, this is, you said it's his third 50-plus save game of the year. His percentage was 88.5. I would really like to see, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere, a breakdown of how many 85% save or 85% save percentage and higher has he had this year. Now, obviously, a few of those games you can say, well, he did, like 50%. But I feel like he has had more of those than not. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I know you had shared a stat with me earlier today or yesterday about how he owns I think 3 of the top 4 games save wise in the league this season, and they're all over 50. In fact, he has the top spot with 59 saves against San Diego on March 1st. I think that was the overtime loss to them.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, even in games where we're not necessarily coming out on top, he's really doing his best in net to give us a chance.
Yeah, I mean, he, all things considered, he's had a good season. There's just times where we need him to consistently have a good season.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's, of course, Mr. Andrews' stats of the game. Leads us into our cool cat plays of the game. I'm gonna, spoiler alert, my play of the game and my player of the game are gonna go hand in hand. So, I'm gonna give it to Medeiros, his first transition goal, because that looked like the old Medi. That was last year. That was 2020 or 2022 to 2023 Medi, and that's what I wanted to see. I will give highlights to Crawford, because that teardrop goal was amazing to watch. But for me, just seeing Medi take that ball and shoot and get the score and be his old self, you can't ask for more. And so for me, my play of the game is Medi's goal, the first one at least. What about for you?
Yeah, that Medi first goal is really nice. And, Damien's a pretty good passer for a goalie. He's not exactly like Christian Del Bianco, but he's pretty good at those outlets. And so to see him hook up directly with the transition player and get the direct assist is always cool to see. There were 3 that stuck out for me. There, like you said, Showtime had a decent amount of good goals throughout the game. I actually, more than his goals, I enjoyed that one-handed pass he had for Will Malcolm's first score, just because, like, in my head, I'm thinking no one else but, like, Callum Crawford would be one to do that, because they were probably less than 3 feet away from each other, real close quarters. You think someone makes that pass, like, unless it's right on the money, the other team's going to be able to knock that away pretty easily. But credit to Will Malcolm for grabbing it and scoring off it. So I thought that was pretty good. Will Malcolm, the empty netter he got, it was actually right before Matt Hossack had he shot it at the empty net, and I think the ball like either overshot it or it dinged off the goalpost, and so it ended up where Malcolm was kind of streaking in from the sideline, and so to see him kind of scoop that up and run literally right past the defense because he's so fast and score off of that was fun to see. I'm actually going to go with Medi as well, but I think I got to go with his second transition goal because that was an unassisted goal. It was all Medi. I think he either blocked the shot or grabbed a loosey, and he just took off running. And he's not necessarily the fastest guy out there, but he's got enough wherewithal and kind of heads up to the defense was closing in on him, and he was able to get it away with enough time and with enough accuracy to get the score off. So it was awesome to see. I'm just glad, I'm happy to see him score, but especially if he's able to score more than once in a game, it kind of brings up shades of, like you said, 2023 Medeiros. So yeah, I think ultimately that Medi goal, the second one, is my play of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it was old Medi. That's all I gotta say. Well, of course, that's our cool cat plays of the game. Leads us into our big cat player of the game. Like I said, the play I picked and the player I picked go hand in hand. And I know, again, I know Malcolm had a record setter and Crawford had a good night. And shout outs to Damood for an amazing night, because he should deserve it. But I gotta give some props to Medi. I mean, to come out this year and not be the same as you were last year, and for lack of better words, honestly, to not be as effective as you were last year, and then to come out for the last home game and just, sorry my language, but go balls to the wall and just be like, all right, I'm gonna go for it, and I'm just gonna do what I did last year and see how it works. And it worked out great. And so to see him play with that intensity and with that drive, it's something I hope to see this week, up north in Calgary, and I hope to see in the playoffs. But if I only get to see it once, I'm glad I got to see it at home. So, Medeiros, you're my player of the game for this one. What about for you?
So I've got two, and Medeiros, he's actually one of my honorable mentions. And yeah, like you said, he had a great game. He had those 2 goals, added 5 loosies, and 2 blocks as well. So he had a good game on both sides of the ball. If it weren't for his running mate in transition, then he would have certainly made the cut for me. But I gotta go with Brandon Goodwin with his 3 goals. Not just the transition one, but kind of playing with the offense for a few shifts, getting in there. Obviously, there weren't a whole lot of dedicated offensive players in today, so he really showed his versatility. On top of that, he grabbed 5 loosies, he caused a turnover. He went 100% on his shots, 3 for 3. So really good to see him do well, and Coach TK definitely gave him his props after the game as well. The other player that comes to mind is the guy we love to appreciate on this podcast, Nick Damude, with those 54 of 61 saves, or 54 saves on 61 shots for 88.5%. He had that assist to Medi for your big cat play of the game. So, cool cat play, excuse me. So it's just awesome to see him kind of hopefully hitting his stride as we get into the stretch run, with the final game against Calgary, and then fingers crossed playoffs. So yeah, Medi, honorable mention. Heck, I'll even throw him in there. Why not? Yeah, Medi, Goodwin, and Damude. Yeah, those would be my big cat players.
Yeah, and of course that's our big cat players of the game. I mean, again, Damude, solid game from him, but Goodwin and Medi, those are those players you didn't expect to see have a big night, and they did. They had a great night, and so I'm glad to see them contribute to the team and to the game. Final thoughts on this game? I'll let you go first. What are your final thoughts on the game against Albany?
Well, it was awesome to see them win. I feel like this is this the 3rd home win in a row that we've seen? Because let's see, Philly, Buffalo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was our last 2 home games. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one was the one, at least record-wise, you looked at it and think, ooh, this one might be tricky. But Panther City, there was a little bit of a dry spell in the second quarter, but otherwise they left no doubt. That's despite the getting killed on loose balls. That's despite getting beaten pretty badly on face-offs, and it just shows what this team is capable of when, the offensive guys are doing their thing, but transition's able to chip in some points here and there, and then Damien just playing up to his full potential and showing what he can do. Really, really good to see against the a team that's up there in the standings and a potential first-round playoff matchup should we make it.
Yeah, and that's, oh my gosh, we'll talk about that here in a bit, because the list of opponents that we could possibly go against is ever shifting.
Yeah, it's like every other team pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just kind of crazy. But yes, if we did face them again, I mean, I almost thought to myself early on, and I wanted to mention it, but I thought I'd wait until now. As we talk about in the playoffs, whenever you see that team that you faced earlier on in the year, do you think we're going to have do you think it's a possibility that we have the opposite effect? If we were to face Albany in the playoffs, would it be their revenge game and their adjustments that could catch us off guard?
I don't think so. In some ways, I don't think it'd be more of that as much as it might be they're playing on their home turf. Though who knows? I think if we win and they lose, we would have that tiebreaker, but they'd probably drop down in the standings as well.
Oh yeah, no, there's, and I'll have to look up the tweet here in a minute, but yeah, basically, there's a ton of different scenarios that are coming down to this final week. But I mean, I would say again against Albany, I'm just glad to see the team win at home, like you said, third win in a row at home, and B, just solid play from both sides. So they had some things messed up, but overall, I think we were able to put the game away the way we should be doing, even with those little last minute scores. But thankfully, we had a good enough lead on them. Well, after the game was finished, that they had a after game autograph session, which was awesome. I mean, they had it out on the field, and everybody had a chance to kind of walk through and say hi to everybody. Unfortunately, that only left one person for the after game interview, where we got to talk to Coach TK. Here's what he said after the game.
So can you talk a little bit about Damoud and how he played today, and how important that is looking potentially down the road to a potential postseason?
If history tells us anything, it's the top 4 goalies in the league are always typically the last 4 teams standing. So, Nicky's proven himself this year, time in and time out. He prides himself on being the backbone of our defense, and tonight he certainly stood on his head. I think he was at 86% before the 2 late ones, but he was outstanding. But he'll be the first to say that our defense was allowing him the shots that we wanted, and that he wanted. But ultimately, he made some big saves, in particular in the fourth there. But again, your best defensive player has to be a goalie.
Can you talk about that first 6-0 start for the game, especially in the transition?
It was a bit of a deodorant, to be honest with you, because you love jumping out to 6-0 lead, but it was masking a lot of stuff that we weren't doing well. I didn't think we played really well defensively. I thought they were able to run around, manufactured real good looks. Again, thankfully, Nicky, stepped up and played real well early. Offensively, we were, I thought, stagnant. Thankfully, we got a couple goals in transition, but again, it was a deodorant because we weren't good. We weren't good, and it came back a little bit to bite us. Thankfully, again, the thing that we've prided ourselves on with this group is being resilient, find a way to win, which we did. But again, it wasn't pretty.
Brandon Goodwin had a pretty good game with hat trick. We saw him get some offensive shifts as well. Can you speak to his performance today and what his versatility brings to the team?
That's why we got him. It was one of the reasons we got him. He had an exceptional summer last year. I thought he played real well last year, as well. He's a guy that can do a little bit of everything. He plays great defense. He's a guy that the more comfortable he gets, and the more of a leadership role that he takes on. But he's been in this league a long time. He's been around, and again, I think he's always been comfortable here. But I think he's starting to relish in the fact that he's one of our leaders. He doesn't wear a letter, obviously, but he's one of our leaders back there. And I think it allows him to be a little bit more free and just go and do what he does best, which is push the ball in transition, play real good, gritty defense, and then manufacture some good looks on net. And tonight they happened to drop from him.
Next week has a lot of parallels. Obviously, Calgary was where the season ended last year. Going in there, coming up with the postseason. I mean, what are you guys looking forward to, and what are you guys planning on for next year?
I haven't done that. I haven't done the algebra on it, but I think I don't know if we're in yet or not in yet, and I think it's officially we're not. But with that being said, it's another opportunity for us to take a step closer to where we want to get to, and that's my mindset. There's a lot of cleanups, and there always is. My job is to be critical. I hate that. Again, it's a big win. We worked hard tonight. We battled hard tonight, but ultimately, my job is to be critical and find the little things that we can fix. So next week's another opportunity. Another opportunity for guys to earn a little bit more trust in their teammates, which is a big thing that we talked about tonight. Because again, I think maybe we had a couple passengers again tonight for the first time not in a long time. We have to get to a point. Any championship team has to get to a point where they have everybody contributing at some capacity. You can't just go out and wear a jersey and just expect things to happen. So. Making that known to the boys is one thing. Again, we have some young guys in our locker room. Our vets did an outstanding job tonight of leading, and I expect them to do the same next week, regardless of the implications. But for me, it's always about put one foot in front of the other, and trying to play our best game. We're still chasing our best game, and that's the mindset, and that's what we're going to go with.
If you do end up in the postseason, what are some things that make you feel like you could make some noise there?
Well, again, we're right committee on the offensive side, which is real good. Obviously tonight was one of those one-offs where, Will had 2 and 3, but he got 2 late ones, an empty netter. But we're so versatile on the front side of it, where anybody can go off on any good night and any given night. Donville, obviously his success, boosting us in a couple overtime wins. Croft can put us on his shoulders at any point. Caputo can score. Obviously, Noxie proved that last week. So we're really versatile on the front side, but we talked about that at the start of the interview. I really love the way Nick DeMood's playing right now, and to a man, our D's playing great in front of him.
Talking about Will Malcolm, even with this 5 points, he now becomes the first Gecko City player to ever hit 100 points in the season. Can you talk about his season as a whole?
He's got 100 points? I'm just joking. Now, you know what, he knows that this is his offense, and we gave him the keys year one. We said, here, this is your offense, you tell us what you want to do. And to a man, he does so many little things very good. He picks up the loose balls. He's a guy that relieves pressure in transition. I'm sure he wants that 6-on-5 play at the end of the game where we just kind of threw it away to do it again. But that's the first time we ever. Shame on me because we haven't really ran it in practice. But he's awesome. The guys love him. He's obviously an elite player in this league. Getting to that 100-point plateau. We're going to need him more in the postseason, and he's even more dangerous when he's playing with a bit of a swagger and playing with confidence, which by all accounts he should have. So again, I'm lucky that we have him.
Good guys. Thank you.
That was a 9 out of 10, I think.
Tonight?
No, me, that man, that was 9 out of 10. Last one was like an 8.5. That was 9 out of 10. That was strong.
I mean, he alluded to a lot of questions, and one of the questions I wanted to allude to was for next week against Calgary, but you definitely wanted to focus more on the players and how everything got shifted around during the game.
Yeah. Obviously, they kind of gave guys different looks in this game, different minutes. It'll be interesting to see what the rotation is going into Calgary, and fingers crossed going forward. But yeah, I think regardless of whether you had mentioned that, I think he was like, I don't know whether we're technically in the playoffs or not anyway, but even regardless of that, they want to win and make the best game plan going forward. So yeah, it's good to have even after a great win like this, as he mentioned, it's his job to be critical. So for him
Yeah.
to be able to nitpick what the team did well, what the team could improve on, what they did badly, it's good to have a coach like that still keeps an even head and doesn't get too high or too low.
Well, yeah, and because people asked about like the big game from Damu, the big game from Malcolm and his points and everything like that, and he's like, yeah, these are all great highs to think about, but there's a ton of stuff we're at the end of the season and he still thinks there's a ton of stuff they need to work on. So, like you said, he's forever just constantly adjusting and thinking about what to change and what to do. But yeah, and I know he was very, and I don't know if I got it in the recording or not. I think I did, but he was just very appreciative after he finished up. He took time. He just took a few seconds just to shake everybody's hand and thank us all for, consistently coming out and supporting the team and everything. And I think it was his way of just saying thank you.
Yeah, it was a really awesome, classy gesture by him. Not something you really expect. We go there and we ask our questions to him and the players, and it's kind of, not to say it's a business arrangement, but they're helping us get content. We're helping get their words out there, and so for him to kind of, even though if it's not obvious, like we're obviously fans of the team,
right?
To running this podcast and everything.
I may or may not have showed up to the post game interview in a Panther City jersey, but go ahead.
Yeah. So for him to be, I guess, acknowledge that and be aware of it and know that we love this game, that him and his team are coming out and working hard to put on good performances every week. It's really nice to see, and that's one thing I do love about the NLL in general, and specifically for us, Panther City, just how approachable everyone is. Even this head coach, who's a Hall of Fame, was a Hall of Fame player when he played, and now he's trying to lead a successful team. But for him to do that, and I think afterwards we asked him about how he feels about the unified versus division standings that they had going and everything. So it's just cool to be able to talk to a head coach on that level and have it not be, I guess you could say, yeah, on some level we're starstruck, but he's so personable and easy to talk to, as well as the rest of the players. And so it's just really cool to have that in a professional sports team that you enjoy watching.
Exactly. And I'm glad he was able to take a second to just thank us for everything. But, well, as I mentioned, one of the questions I sent to Coach TK is a lot of similarities going into Calgary next week. I mean, Calgary is the team that knocked us out last year. The team, I think, if I remember right, they're out of the playoffs. They're out. So
funny enough, we were the team that knocked them out mathematically
by
beating Albany. Yeah.
Well, that's funny. But as we know, Calgary is no pushover. They still have very, very good players and a very good goalie. We don't need to mention his name to know who you're talking about. But going into Calgary this week, I don't know. Like, part of me is very scared to see what Calgary we're going to get. Are we going to get the Calgary who's like, all right, season's over, let's just have a good game and move on to next year? Or are we going to go against the Calgary who is kind of out for blood and wants to spoil things for Panther City?
I'll tell you what, my hope is we go against the first Calgary.
Right.
My hope is that, Zach Courier, Jesse King, Del Bianco, y'all have had a great year. Let's go ahead and give some of these other players some run, get a good look at them going into the off season, see what they can do. Best case scenario,
put some backups in,
Yeah, best case scenario that would happen, but guys like to compete, players and coaches.
And it's their last home game of the season too. So that's
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. It's hard to say what they're gonna do. Well, no, I won't go into my prediction just yet. but yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how they react. I know in Panther City's first year, I went to the last game of the season at home. Oh yeah, you were there too.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah, and it was they had in Orleman, who was still the backup goalie at that point, and so we got to see him in that rather than Danude, as well as some other guys that I think hadn't gone quite as much time during the season on either side of the ball. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and you'll always want to play against your best is kind of the cliche. You want to play against the best players so you can test yourself, and it wouldn't hurt Panther City to do that. However, at the end of the day, a win's a win, and
right.
if playing against kind of the more inexperienced crew is going to help your chances of leading to that, and in our case, securing a playoff spot, then that's not necessarily a terrible thing.
Well, and we'll get to our predictions here in a minute, but I have a funny feeling that it's going to be a mix of both. I think they're going to come out just, guns a-blazing, trying to, pretty much put the hurt on Panther City, and hoping that they can get a big enough lead that they can start putting in those backups and everything more into the second half. Realistically, I would probably guess that they're going to do a mix of it. They're going to have some starters and some backups, or because that's the other thing you don't want. You don't want anybody to get injured. You don't want any, you don't want one of your star players to be injured for next season, and not saying that, the NLL is a injury laden, league, but you never know what could happen. And so it's like weighing both of those, like, hey, we want to beat this team, but also I need these players for next year. So I don't know. This game makes me nervous. On top of that, we are the official TSN game of this week, which we were last week too, against Albany. But man, getting some eyes on us for sure. I would say going into my prediction, I think Panther City wants it more, and they need it more. This is a win, and again, we'll talk about the standings here in a minute and how important it is, but this is a win. We've talked about needed wins throughout the season. This is it. This is a win and guaranteed to get in. A loss, we don't know. But I think Panther City needs it more. So I'm going to say a win. I'm going to say the backups are in the second half and we pull away, hopefully. I'm going to say 13-11.
I think that matches my prediction for the Albany game, which, I didn't get the score. Yeah, I didn't get the score right, but I got the outcome right at least. Yeah, I'd agree in the sense that I do think that Calgary, they want their guys to show up and put on a good game for the fans, but the outcome, I don't know how motivated they are going to necessarily be to give 100% effort on their part from their star players, especially if they're nursing some nagging injuries. I think Panther City is going to look to take a pretty sizable lead, maybe 5 goals or more going into halftime. If they're able to do that, hopefully they can rest Crawford and Malcolm and Donville, some of the key cogs a bit more. Not enough to where we'll give up a big lead or anything, but hopefully, best case scenario, I think I'd like to see Ty Thompson and Ronan Pusch, some of those other guys, Cam McLeod, like to see them be able to get a little bit more run. But I do want to see our starters out there as well, just to get the regular rotation guys minutes going into what'll hopefully be our first playoff game afterwards. So yeah, like you said, you win, you're in. You lose, and it's not up to us to decide.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, if you lose and you still make the playoffs, you don't really have any momentum going in. You're like, oh, we just kind of got in by happenstance, and that's not a mindset that the team will really do too well on. So I think that Panther City is going to win. I don't think that Calgary is going to hit double digits.
Oh, really?
I think that we are going to win 13-9.
13-9. Okay. Either way, 13 points from our side. I think we'll take that any day. But that game is, of course, Saturday night, 8 p.m. Central. I think it is Central, 8 p.m. Central. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting. And I know there is a watch party, which, by the way, if you follow Panther City on social media, there's a watch party in Fort Worth. Unfortunately, I believe I am working that night, so more than likely won't be able to make it from here to Fort Worth in under 15 minutes. But, well, I did want to take a minute, look at the standings. You mentioned it earlier, and we talked about throughout, but pretty much 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 spots are taken, 2 spots are left, and 1, 2, 3, 4 teams vying for it. Let's take a look at those 4 teams real quick. It's Panther City, Vancouver. That's right. The same Vancouver who everybody thought was, pretty much just like, okay, rebuild year. They're not going to win a lot. They're not going to do anything. They're in the mix. Saskatchewan and the Ottawa Black Bears. I mean, the New York Riptide. They are in the mix. 4 teams vying for that one spot.
I must tell you, there's actually a bonus. There's actually another team that has a double header this last week. They're on the current standings. They show up as below Calgary because they technically don't have a record yet. Yeah, Rochester, our friends that lit us up at home out of nowhere.
That was, right, they could win 2 straight and somehow sneak in. But
yeah, I don't think they would. They don't have a way of sneaking past us. But for that 8th spot, oh god, yeah, it's interesting all the scenarios that could play out.
Well, and so here's the thing. Like we said, a win that puts us 10-8. That guarantees us a spot. Now, the funny part is, if we win and Halifax loses and Buffalo loses and Albany or Georgia loses, that puts us in a 4 spot for a home playoff game in the first round.
Hey, wow, let's see.
I doubt that's going to happen, but yes, things could fall for a first round playoff spot, for a first round home game for Panther City.
Well, okay. Let's see who's playing next week. Rochester, Georgia. I don't think the outcome of that's necessarily going to play into much because the best we can do is tie with Georgia at 10-8, and then they have a tiebreaker because they beat us in Georgia. So we'll put that game aside. Vancouver and San Diego. Vancouver is the team that no one wants to face right now. I'm glad that we caught them early on in the season for that matter, because Per Malosky's done a bang up job turning that team around after he's like a 2-8 start. It's crazy.
Yeah. They're like you said earlier, they're the Georgia Swarm of this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I don't think we'll care about that game so long as we win. Technically, even if we lose and they win, we'll have that tiebreaker for beating them in the head-to-head. And yeah, I guess San Diego's locked in the 2 spot too. So
yeah. Toronto and San Diego are they're locked in 1 and 2.
Yeah. So
I mean, like I said, that's why it comes down to a win. We need a win this weekend to guarantee us a spot, but a loss that leaves Vancouver could move up. That leaves Saskatchewan could move up. That leaves New York could move up. You said Rochester, if they win 2 in a row, I mean, that puts them, that'll put them at the 8th spot.
Yeah.
Which, if we lose and we get pushed down enough, could push us out of there completely.
Yeah, I think a lot of things would have to break against us for us not to at least get that 8th spot, because what Saskatchewan's got the tiebreaker against us. I think that's who we've really got to watch out for. So we got to be cheering for Toronto this weekend. And knowing that Toronto already has the 1 seed locked up, I don't know if they're going to... We were just talking about Calgary not playing their main cogs. I don't know what Toronto's going to do. But we're definitely... Halifax plays Colorado. We're definitely cheering for the Mammoths.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned about Toronto. Nick Rose is in MVP conversation. You don't think they're going to start him?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it would be hard to give MVP to there's 18 games in a season, and if you decide to sit a healthy goalie that's in the running, then
that's where you might give him a half. You might give him a half, but man. Anyway, this weekend is gonna be an interesting one, and I think it's exactly what the league wanted. They wanted this, open standings where teams are fighting for those last spots, trying to get in the playoffs last minute. Nothing is exactly locked up except for the first 2 spots, which is usually, completely locked. Usually most things are locked up by this point in the year, but here they are with just parity across the board.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Part of me wishes that the schedule of who we play had changed, but the divisions were kept intact.
Yeah,
there'd probably be no rhyme or reason to that, because if that were the case, then it's like, why do you even have divisions? So it probably doesn't make much sense. But man, if that were the case, well, we'd be looking at a 2 seed right now.
Yeah. I mean, we'd be up there, but unfortunately, open standings and open divisions. I mean, that kind of leads us to where we are now. Which again, I think overall the league was kind of aiming for, but
ultimately it's a good thing. We got to see Dane Smith live. That was pretty.
Yeah,
cool.
There you go. Right, some highlights. But like I said, the year honestly comes down to this weekend. Multiple games in play, multiple spots in play for Panther City. It is definitely a win and guarantee in. A loss, you're open to chance, but I hope for our sake, that things go our way this weekend. Hopefully we can get a win, get us closer to that playoff spot, get us closer to that chance at a title, and closer to a home playoff game. I mean, that's something I think both of us definitely wanted. But as always, thank you all for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook. Check out our videos on YouTube, as always, and check out our episodes wherever your streaming services are. Once again, I'm Nicholas.
I'm once again Andy.
And we'll see y'all next time.
Sweet. Cheers, y'all.